Okay, so let's start. It's 8 past, so I think we're good to go. And welcome to this third cohort call of Open Hardware Makers. We are in week 5, building open projects, in the second week in which we are visiting this module. And as usual, some announcements. This call is recorded except for work in the breakout rooms, and you can turn off your camera if you don't feel comfortable with being recorded. That's absolutely fine. The recording will be available in our YouTube channel, and of course, all interactions must respect our community guidelines. You can find those in the website. You have any problems or questions, you can use the chat here in Zoom. You then send us an email. You can use the course forum, every single channel where you can reach out to us. So we're just doing the icebreaker exercise, and people were sharing their favorite plants and very, very interesting approaches to favorite plants. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about plants, but I'm not going to go there now. So we are here in week 5, and as you can see there in the schedule, we are working on the second week of building open projects. We won't lie, this is quite a packed module. It has a lot of information, but we do believe it's a lot of necessary information, and it will get more and more, like the curriculum goes from very broad in the very beginning to more open hardware specifics as you advance. So just to do some recap, in week 3, that's 2 weeks ago, we had the second cohort call, and we kind of touched into this 4 concepts, which was the vision statement. We work on sharing the vision statement of the project. It's kind of the compass you have for guiding all your actions, defining your SMART goals, trying to understand how you are contributing to the community in terms of the broader open hardware community. Are you replicating a project? Are you forking? Are you contributing to something that already exists? How are you doing that? And also, we kind of touched very lightly on planning your front page. So turning your vision statement into something that you can show the world about your project, and people can quickly grasp and understand what you're doing. And last week, you should have had your mentor call, and you started probably working on building open projects. And building open projects has, again, 4 main topics. One that we consider is really important, even if this program is platform agnostic. I think we mentioned this like 1,000 times, but this is quite relevant. We won't say you have to document your open hardware in GitHub, but we do believe, I mean, you can document your open hardware whatever you want, but we do believe that there are some methodologies, some practices that are key, and version control is one of those. And Git is one of the things that enables version control. So you probably learn about version control in the module. We also talk about modularity and how designing your project and also your documentation in a way that is modular can help you advance and can help you gain contributors faster and in an easier way, less painfully, let's say. And other 2 topics that we will touch particularly today is the minimum viable project and the documentation plan. So this week we are in building open projects, and those are the titles of the 4 submodules that I mentioned. The agenda for today will focus on 2 of the assignments where we think are 2, not the most relevant because all of them are relevant, but 2 of the most important assignments that from this module, which are the minimal viable project. You're going to work on your own, and then you're going to give feedback to each other. And then the documentation plan. So who are you documenting for? Can you reduce the pain of writing documentation by planning properly and having in mind who you're speaking to? So you kind of invest your energy in the most efficient way. And there we will also write on our own and then have a general discussion. We will finish with a Q&A as usual. And here, what we're going to want to give you in the calls is, because we know it's a lot of content, we want to give you the opportunity to work on some of the assignments, at least for a little while during the call, and get some feedback on it. So it's like a push for dedicating time on your own after the call. So Alex, do you want to
Yes, I would
Yeah.
like to. And please let me know if there are any connection issues so
Okay.
I can repeat. Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction and also for the quick wrap up. I will talk a bit more about the minimal viable project. You probably already heard something like minimal viable um, product, because this is something which is also used in a business context, but we want to use the same method, the same tools to define a minimal viable project for you, your open source project. In the very beginning now, I want to differentiate between our vision statement, that's what you worked on last time, and the minimal viable project, because it already describes and shows what the difference is. In general, you can find all the information also in our curriculum, which is online, and maybe you already have read it. But if not, please look there. There's much more information what we are giving you today. Um, so first of all, what's the difference between the vision statement and the MVP? So the vision statement that basically describes the long-term goals and of the project. It's most likely non-technical and with simple words, and it targets users and potential contributors and is more for external communication. So if you want to describe the project to somebody who wants to know what it is, like what it does, not how it works. What the person wants to know what it is, then you describe it with your vision statement. Now to the MVP. The MVP describes the minimal goal you want to achieve with your project. I mean, it has some overlap with the vision because, well, the vision is like the general goal, but here you have like also maybe also, let's call it the technical goal. It describes technical features, function, and it's mainly there for developers or contributors for internal communication, because it knows what is the technical like to dos, what is the technical goal, what should it be technically be able to do. It's also a really great tool for project development, because if you have a first MVP, a prototype, a first minimal viable project, you can give it to, for example, corporations partners or people like users to test it, and then gather their feedback and improve your project with their feedback. So you can already test, like, for example, specific features, because there's also an MVP for features. But in general, if you have your first product, and we will have, sorry, project, and we will have also examples of that, then you can already, well, yeah, as I said, work on refining then the other functions if the base is already set. All right. So just like also some things to why actually writing or defining an MVP is really important or useful, let's say. It actually is also useful to break down a huge task into smaller ones and smaller actionable steps. Because usually you have always this big picture, but now the MVP also breaks down the big picture, the big description into smaller pieces, into technical parts, which then can be worked on independent from each other, which is also useful to point out entry points for contributors, right? So people know what are the things which have to be done and which are essential. So it's not the choosing the color of whatever, then the housing or whatever. It's more about building the housing, and the people know what's essential and know what part they can work on, for example. And that's why it's also important, if you want to communicate what has to be done, and if you want to onboard contributors, it's really good to have a MVP to show them where they can contribute actually. All right. What we will do now is we will give you an example, because everything is easier with an example. And I don't know if you already, yeah, well, I introduced this project already with the canvas. Again, I'm using my small example project. It's called Shore Cloud, and it's an actual project. I actually linked it also in the document. So if you want to have a look at it, do it. Anyway, I use it as an example because what we did here, this is a very high level simplification of the minimal viable project, but we thought that this might be a good idea for this call, that you also, similar to the vision statement, that you develop a statement for a viable project, the minimal viable project. So this example statement is, my project is A, and then you describe in just 2 or 3 words, or maybe 4, that you what your project actually is, yeah, in precise words, which consists of, and then you can name the different modules. It does not have to be like I did it. I wrote an electronic setup, and then also listed what the electronic setup contains. Actually, the modules would be like the electronic setup and then the software. I mean, you can also always like go a level deeper and also split the electronic setup into different modules. But for now, for my minimal viable project, I just wanted to split it up into this electronics and the software, the web server I want to use in my project. You can also list this in a bullet point list, because the next step will be that you will also create a statement like that. If you have too many modules, because my project is also very simple, so if you have more modules, you can have a bullet point list. But the next part is to make it viable, it has to. And then you list the essential properties and function and features. I will give you the example. My project is a DIY light alarm clock. The DIY I actually could leave out, but the essential part is actually the light, and it's an alarm clock. So what it should do is actually it should show the time, because this is the main function, the essential function of a clock, right? And then there should be a way to set the alarm. And this is something for my project, which is, let's say, like the way I want to solve this. It should be controllable via a web interface to set and play an alarm. And then we have another one. It's a light alarm. So it should be possible to regulate the light color and intensity. And again, this is also an example where I could even more simplify it and just say it should just be able to regulate the light on and off, because color and intensity is something which can be also improved and implemented at a later stage. But enough now from my example. What we want you to do now is to take your project and create a sample statement, not a sample statement, but a statement, an MVP statement for your project. And you will now have 5 minutes to do this in silence, and then we will put you into breakout rooms, and you can then share it with each other, and then share it also in our doc. So as you can see, just scroll a bit more down in our document. You can see also the place where you can share then your statement, and then we will just look at them and pick 1 or 2 and discuss them in the group. Right. Juli, did I forget something?
No, I think it's important to note that you may already have a project that is quite advanced, and but you can do an MVP for new features. Sorry, I have my cat here. You can do an MVP for trying a new feature, for example. You can even try to think of this as the iterative cycle that we constantly talk about. So I would think of this in 2 stages. First, which is the problem I want to solve. If you're just starting, this will be your main problem, but maybe it's a problem you want to solve with a new feature. And then to prioritize, because we often have many, many things we want to implement. So it's, for me at least, it's good to list all the things I want to do and then prioritize which one I will try in this new MVP. So yeah, just feel free to turn off your camera if you feel more comfortable to work for 5 minutes, and then we come back and discuss this.
All right.
And we are back.
We are back and everybody is now leaving their minimal viable project statement in the document.
Yes, so let's pick up one and try to understand what's going on with our MVP statements, if that's okay. So let's start with I hear. Our project is a wearable device which consists of a microphone and screen. To make it viable, it has to transcribe speech on screen. Was it easy to write?
Yes, because actually we already were at this stage. Right now it's what we have. We have the minimal viable product.
Okay.
There are some caveats here because a device that does this actually exists, and it's your smartphone, right? So I was thinking what I should add maybe is the fact that it should be in a non-disruptive way. People with hearing disabilities, they want to maintain eye contact. Mm-hmm. So rather than looking at their phone to hear or to read what somebody is saying, they don't want to look at their phone, they want to maintain eye contact. So I was thinking that should be added in there somewhere, because otherwise everybody will say, okay, that my smartphone can do that. That's the only thing that I want to change.
That sounds, yeah, that sounds great. And what do you, Alex, think? I don't know, do you have any feedback, or anyone else has feedback for Lawrence?
So what I can say, I like it. I see, I agree to also your suggestion, and well, actually, it's also really good to hear that you already have your MVP basically, and that you're also already working with this concept, that you are already at this stage. Actually, I don't have much more to add, but I would ask maybe others. I see you are still typing a bit. Do you need some more time there? Because then you can also just take another minute if you want to finish something there, but it would be also great to get your feedback, what you think about Stereo Ninja MVP. Sorry, not Stereo Ninja, I hear MVP.
I had a question. So Lawrence, when I saw the documentation that is available there right now for I hear, what it looked great to me is that it's a pair of glasses, right?
Yes.
How does I mean, I know it's a wearable device, it's there, but it's are you planning to add that to any other kind of will it always be on glasses, or are you planning to do it differently?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if you're already wearing glasses, then wearing them on top of them might be difficult. And we're thinking about different ways. Also, in order to make it more comfortable, it's also important to our users that it's not super obvious and visible and weird looking, right? Feedback that we get is that if you already have a disability, you don't want to draw too much attention to yourself. So we want to be like non-disruptive in many different ways. So that's why I chose wearable device, because it can be something different than just glasses.
That's interesting.
Maybe a feedback from my side. So I would think you should make it a little bit more specific. But if I read that, I say, okay, if I have a smartphone in my pocket that already fulfills the MVP.
True, yeah.
So I guess you should be a little bit more specific. So when you see it, that you know, okay, now I have fulfilled my MVP if I've done that.
Yeah, I think I should add one more line that basically, I think the maintaining eye contact, I think that's the main point here, is that allows you to read text while maintaining eye contact with whomever you're speaking with. And condensing that into one sentence, it would be perfect, I think.
You mentioned something that I think is super important. For it to be viable, it has to be, it has to not catch attention, right? So it has to be able to transcribe speech on the screen, maintaining eye contact, and being like friendly, user-friendly, or something like that. I don't know how to phrase it. There's some work there, but something that shows that you are thinking of users with disabilities too, because there's a layer of complexity also.
Yes. I'm not sure how to condense that into.
No. I'm just thinking. I know that's the difficult part of it.
And I also want to highlight that this statement, does not replace your MVP. This is just a tool we choose now for this call to just quickly describe your MVP. Your real MVP should have more details, obviously, and should be described also, in more detail and with more levels if you want it, right? This is.
Yeah, which kind of microphone, which kind of wearable, which kind of screen. It has to fulfill this function. It has to look in a certain way. It has to, I don't know, some usability constraints. All those things you can, as much as you can detail, the better, because it would be super nice to have an MVP of what you have now and keep adding. I'd love to see how it changes with time. Yeah, that's my own curiosity. Alex, shall we move to Stereo Ninja?
Yes. I can quickly read it.
Yeah.
For you.
Go ahead.
Stereo Ninja. Our project is a digital stereo microscope, which consists of a setup around a Raspberry Pi. So 2 cameras, a 3D monitor with shutter glasses, and some printed frames holder cases or case. To make it viable, it has to show a stereo image on the display, which can be viewed in 3D by the user, and the setup is nicely enclosed. Actually, I like the statement. I mean, it brings everything to the point, and it's more specific. It has more details than from iHear, but in general, I think it's also not too much for the statement right now. I really liked your approach, Andreas, that you would try to compare iHear with a smartphone, and I'm now thinking of something which would fit, which is not a stereo microscope into this, and I'm not successful, which is good for you, right?
Is it supposed to be low cost? Is that a feature?
Yes. Yeah, it's a feature.
Because I think that's important also for iHear. And for it to be viable, it has to be able to, you have to be able to build it under $100, whatever. I'm just making up a number. I think what we're trying to do with make it viable, it has to blah, 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 is defining the constraints, because the MVP is all about the constraints that allow you to concentrate and then test. Okay, it has to show stereo image on the display, which can be viewed in 3D by the user. Sounds very cool. Okay. Lawrence, do you have any?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I'd love to see it. I'm I'm very interested in how it would work. I don't know what shutter glasses are. I think I can guess what they are, but I don't really know. So maybe if everybody needs to understand what it is, then yeah, shutter glasses is maybe a little bit specific. Stereo in 3D image, yeah. I think for an MVP, I wonder why it has to be nicely enclosed, but that could just be me.
Yeah, I think, but it doesn't really add too much to the statement. I guess we could get rid of that.
For me, the nice enclosure comes last, right? It's the first get it working and then worry about the aesthetics.
Well, maybe it comes from, but we already have kind of a prototype, so that's kind of very similar to the MVP. But I guess we want to add a bit more.
Yeah, maybe it's also because the prototype is somehow not tidy and has so many cables sticking out.
That is a great point. I work with the Open Flexure microscope team, and the fact they have a product, almost a product. In fact, it is a product, but the change from cables everywhere to cables very tidy in a case and everything was a huge, massive change in adoption. So it looked more professional, looked more like serious, let's say, and that helped people adopting it. So I understand that that's why I was asking Lawrence, we would love to see it in time, because as you evolve in time, you'll probably be adding more and more features, right? Okay. Do you have anything else, Alex, before we move on? Alex Kuchera, Alex Gay, before we move on.
OHM, Alex.
Yeah.
No, actually, I don't have anything to add. I think this is good. This is okay. Let's move to the next section.
Yeah, sorry. One thing is that we created a forum thread in the Ghost forum where you can share. I don't know, Alex, if you can paste that, because I am sharing my screen and it's quite a mess. Where you can share your MVP and get some feedback. I think you got some nice feedback now, but it's also a good way of promoting what you're doing. And people in the forum are not only from OHM, they are from the whole community. So it's good to do it there. Okay, so moving on, we should just share. We're going to talk about who are we documenting for, which is a very important topic, and sometimes it's quite a mess, with our projects. So Alex, if you want to go ahead.
Yes, so I posted quickly information for you. I posted the link to the forums thread in the chat of Zoom. I will add it also to the document we are working in, so you have it there as well, but for now it's in the chat. Okay, so documenting for whom? Something we actually can't say often enough is that you should plan your documentation before you start documenting. I mean, we don't want to be like, well, we also don't want to put the bar too low, but actually also documenting something is already better than documenting nothing. But a really good documentation makes a project really like well done and brings it really to the next level. And this is not just like done by putting together some descriptions, but you really have to plan it and think about it. And one important point which we want to point out is actually there are different audiences, right? So you have to keep them in mind. You have always users, so people who just want to use your project, use, for example, the stereo microscope. But you have also people who want to help and also want to contribute to it. And you need to create also documentation specific for this contributors and developers. Say they need to know more things or different things than just users. And users might be, for example, get confused if you throw at them like technical details of whatever, various things together, which they actually don't need to know. They need more user instructions. These are already the questions. Juli, can you skip the slide? I think the one before. Okay, these are the questions, sorry. Well, then I will quickly give you a wrap up. So what you should do now is think a bit about who are your users and your contributors. And what you can do is actually you can create a persona. Please don't be confused when you don't know what a persona is. I will just give you a rough description and we will use it as a simple tool for us now. But if you want to read more about what persona are, I put a link to the respective page on the Mozilla Open Leader training, and just take a look there and see and look and read up what this means in detail and where it is used. What I want to do, what I want you to do is to describe an imaginary user. This is the persona or a contributor. So just imagine a person, give the person a name, give their abilities and, well, also properties, like things they can do or like to do, preferences and so on. And then try to understand it, try to understand the user, and based on the observations and understanding of the point of view of this imaginary user, try to plan your documentation. So I'm giving you an example. You want, for example, that the user directly, if they visit your page, they basically need the information quickly how to use your product. So they want, I'm taking the example of the stereo microscope, they just want to generate or to be able to use it and see a 3D image. And I mean, if it's self-explanatory and you can just plug it in and it shows the image, then it's fine. But when there's any problem, so a user will want to understand what can he do when an error occurs, for example. So if you want to document for users, you should make it obvious what to do, so how to use it and what to do, and highlight this in your documentation.
Alex, I think that's something important there, just to ground it a bit, because if not, it sounds like we are talking about imaginary people. Is okay. That in the case of the Stereo Ninja, let's imagine there's a teacher at school somewhere, for example, in my country, in Argentina, who heard about Stereo Ninja and would love to build one and use it to teach in class. So having that teacher in mind, which are the modules of documentation that need to be there, and which are the modules that are not really that necessary? So what comes for, following the example, what comes for to me, just first thing is you need the assembly instructions, you need the list of the bill of materials or list of components. As Alex mentioned, you need how to troubleshoot if things go wrong, but in a very easy, non-super technical way. You don't probably need a lot about how to contribute to the software or how to contribute to building a feature, because that will be next step, right? But instead, if you're thinking of a member of your community or a member of a Fab Lab somewhere else that is working on microscopy, or some academic that is working on building microscopes, then the contribution guidelines are much more relevant. And you need other kind of language to speak to this person. So thinking of personas, and if you, again, we don't have time now to go in this course to go so deep, but in the curriculum, you will find all the materials of how to build a persona and how to understand which are the pains, which are the gains that your project is addressing. And this will kind of help you tailoring the message. Something that is important is the platform too. You probably, if you want to reach out to end users like the teacher, using only GitHub is probably not the best option. So thinking not only of the message, but also of how the message is delivered, we will work on this more later on, is helpful for planning your documentation. So Alex, do you think we can start a general discussion around this?
Yes, I think so. I think this is a good time. And in general, I mean, we are repeating things and just touching things which are described in the curriculum in a way more detailed way. Please take a look. But let's get to the questions now. So
you already have some documentation. There are some, I saw something from iHear. I saw, Andreas, that you have some for Stereo Ninja, and Alex L. Which is the best challenge you find when thinking of documenting?
So please take your time and think about it a bit. So we have, yeah. And
yeah, I don't know if we have that much time to think on our own and then come back. But as we are only a few people, I think we can also like just unmute ourselves and just share what are the challenges you're finding.
Yeah, I'm happy to share some of my experience. So we've been working on our project with about 5-6 people over the past couple months. I've been doing most of the 3D modeling. Somebody else has been working on the software. And a lot of other people have been involved with lots of ideas and bringing it to the users. And so there's different people with different ways of looking at the project. And it's hard to get it all together into one piece of documentation, right? So, and I don't want to make a 3D printing manual and then have our software guy do a software manual and then have the rest of the group do a usage manual. Tying it all together, I think that's our biggest challenge. And I know exactly what I've done and I can document that, but I'm not really good at then, you know, putting the whole documentation together and making it presentable.
That's super interesting. Does anyone have to say anything about that? How do you, sorry, do you find similar problems?
Yeah, I can very much relate to the making it presentable because, well, we do not really have proper documentation right now. So what we have is project logs. So wrote up little things which were happening, which we were testing. But in the end, not everything is really relevant. So maybe we tested something out, it didn't work, or I don't know, we were thinking about going in this direction or that direction, but eventually we now have to bring everything together and just make the, sum it up, make the most important points first, and I guess this is the big thing that's missing in our project at least.
Yeah, but I really like that you are actually also writing down like what you tried and what did not work, and this should be also part of like the bigger documentation, like in general, because if somebody wants to like maybe reuse some parts of your project, then they probably want also to know why you choose certain things to design in a way you design them, right? So you should also have this somewhere, but maybe a bit hidden. So it's not scaring away, for example, then users. Yeah? That's actually the point. That's why I'm saying keep it clean. Keep it clean. This is actually a really good idea, and there are different possibilities. And what we see now is that many open hardware projects actually are represented on different platforms, also for different purposes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there is some, there are many papers coming out of people making open hardware in academia that address this problem of documentation, because the bigger your project is, the more effort it demands on documentation, right? And the younger your project is, the less you are motivated to invest so much time in documenting. So how do you arrive to that balance? And so one of the things that these papers mention is that keeping a diary to capture these decisions that Alex is mentioning, the diary of the building, let's say, it's a good way of keeping it there. And if you use some, this is good for contributors thinking of developers more than users, as Alex was saying, but if you use GitHub or GitLab or any other version control platform, you know, they have some project management tools now, and they offer wikis and things like that, where you can you can add a wiki to a GitLab or GitHub project and start documenting very roughly without thinking too much about this design decisions that are so important. And will often, if your project grows enough that people start contributing to it a lot, it will often save a lot of time for you afterwards in tech support, you know, because you can always say, go to the wiki, the explanation of this isn't there. So documenting this as you go, it may look like a lot of burden, like a big burden. But if you do it roughly, at least as you go, it's a very important resource for developers.
I mean, but I totally agree. I mean, ever since I've been in IT, well, for 20 years now, documentation always has been an issue. So it is super important. But the other thing that I think Alex just mentioned, or was you do that, I don't know, but scaring away people, right? If you go too deep too quick, I think a lot of people, users, will be like, oh, this is, I'm not technical enough to pull this off.
It happens to me.
Yeah, so it happens to me all the time as well. I mean, some things I'm super technical about and I want the detail, and some things I don't want the detail and I just want to know, can I do this or not? So I want to see one page, oh yeah, this is something I can comprehend. This is something I can manage. And and probably having that on different platforms is probably the way. I think the typical user won't be on GitHub. So GitHub might be the right place for really deep details. And then, yeah, keeping user documentation somewhere else. I think that's quite important.
Yeah, the combination is crucial, right? I work with many community-based projects that they are really willing to engage people who are non-tech savvy at all, or at least non-tech savvy related to that specific project. And even a simple forum, even a simple Discord forum grew the community so much because people just look at GitLab or GitHub as users and it's like, that's too complicated. Like they may not have, that's a big barrier, which is although super necessary for developers and contributors. So the combination of both is I think it's a good one.
I also agree, but what I want to do is also I wanted to share a example of a documentation for mainly users and people who want to just rebuild something, and something in this case is the open flexure microscope. And I don't know, Juli, why you did not bring this up, because Juli is working in this group as well. And I really, really like this documentation. It's, in my opinion, really easy to use as a user. I'm not developing, but just using the open flexure microscope. And it basically brings everything to a point as, like, for example, just in the very beginning already, the different buttons, how to build, how to use, and so on. And that's, in my opinion, amazing for like just catching all the users. But then again, if you look a bit deeper, if you are a developer, if you are a contributor, you also have to think about that you want more information. So contributors are actually also like looking deeper in a website, not just on the surface. So they will find also the GitHub link, or in this case, the GitLab link. And then you can see like the whole plethora of details and all the technical documentation of the open flexure microscope, and it's amazing. But this is all hidden below the surface. So in my opinion, the open flexure microscope documentation here, what you see here, is a really good one for users. But,
yeah, I didn't want to bring that up because I am working with a team, but it is listed as one good example. I think one lesson from here is think of verbs, which are the actions that people can perform to engage with your project. People can use your microscope or use your wearable device. People can modify it. People can contribute, can improve it. People have to install software. Which are the actions? And the actions will kind of guide your documentation steps. One important thing here to mention, just about because we brought up the open flexure microscope, is that the team has also developed Git Building, which is a software for documenting open hardware based on Git, but in a much more appealing way for general audiences, and also for hardware developers to have it simpler to keep track of their development. So if you go to build a microscope, you see follow assembly instructions, and then you go to something that is built with Git building. Sorry. Okay. we are almost on time, but Alex, do you want to say anything else before moving on?
Yes, I want to add something about the platform. So there are different platforms out there. You probably know, like Wikifactory, which and also Instructables, Hackster, Hackaday, and so on, which present sometimes the project in a more, let's say, user-friendly way. And well, what you always can do, as I already said in the beginning, is that you can also have your project on 2 platforms, and you can split it up that way, that you have like just the building instructions, for example, on Instructables. This also gives you more visibility, because if you are also on more platforms, this is also more work, because you have to cure like the different platforms, the presentation, but it also gives you more visibility. Anyway, yeah, with this was my last comment. I think we can, is there any question from your side? I mean, we are just touching it here. There's more in more details in our curriculum, but are there any questions right now?
Okay, then I just pasted in the chat. That is how documentation looks when it's produced by Gidrilling, I think. Yes. Okay. So next steps, as usual, just make sure that you have a mentor meeting scheduled for next week. Remember, there is no cohort call next week. We see each other. I don't think we see each other on the 4th. I think we see each other on the 5th. Yes, that was not updated, 5th. And of course, we will send you the email with the next week outline, open cohort specifics. Again, this is quite packed, but it has a lot of valuable information. So if you can take your time to just go through the assignments and read everything we've put in there, I think it will help a lot. And of course, you can always contact us through email, forum, or smoke signals. I don't know. I don't know if there are any questions or comments. If not, we are closing here. I take that as a no. So yeah.
There was an unmute.
Oh, no, I nothing for me.
I think
Okay.
also Alex unmuted, and
Yeah, but this was no. There's nothing to say from my side.
okay.
Okay. Sorry for that. I was not looking. But yeah. Okay. Then thank you everyone for joining. We are closing here, and we see each other in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Have a great week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.